Here in Chapter 22, we are going to talk quite a bit about management control systems. We will also discuss transfer pricing. You guys need to make sure that you can do the calculations for transfer pricing. Spend some additional time looking at it because some students have issues on the test for this particular chapter. So make sure you understand what is going on with the transfer pricing. We will also talk quite a bit about multinational considerations. We have multiple learning objectives in this particular chapter. We're going to describe what a management control system is and what its three key properties are. We're going to describe the benefits and cost of decentralization compared to centralization. We will explain what transfer prices are, and we will talk about the 4 criteria managers use to evaluate them. Keep in mind that managers are evaluated on their performance, and if we have got subunits of our corporation that sell products or services to other subunits of the corporation, then the prices that one subunit charges the other subunit is going to affect the purchasing subunit's bottom line, of which that manager is going to be evaluated on and held responsible for. So this is a kind of a testy subject for some corporations and their underlying subunits. We will definitely calculate transfer prices, and we're going to learn 3 distinct methods for doing so. We will illustrate how market-based transfer prices promote what is called goal congruence, which we will learn what that is. This is promoted in perfectly competitive markets, but as we all know, every market out there is not perfectly competitive. So we have to look at some additional issues. We will understand how to avoid making suboptimal decisions, and we're talking about suboptimal decisions from the corporation's standpoint. We will learn about goal congruence and how goal congruence in a way is made up of 2 things. The goals of the corporation and then those individual managers' goals. Again, this is a testy subject, and it's very important that you all as management accountants understand. So understanding how to avoid making suboptimal decisions when transfer prices are based on full cost plus a markup. We've learned in a prior chapter what markup is. It's basically taking a particular number and multiplying it times a percentage in order to increase it, including a markup. We will describe the range of feasible transfer prices. A range meaning we're going to have a low end and a high end when there is unused capacity at one of our subunits. And we'll also talk about alternative methods for arriving at the eventual hybrid price, which is one of our methods that we will look at. We will apply a general guideline for determining a minimum transfer price, and we will, of course, definitely discuss incorporating income tax considerations in multinational transfer pricing. Okay, the United States is not the only country in the world that charges income taxes. So if we have subunits of our corporation that transfer or sell products or services to other subunits, tax considerations must also be considered when setting prices from one subunit to the next, and what their effect will be on the bottom line, not only of the subunits in the transaction, but the corporation as a whole. And this can get very, very sticky, and this is an issue that is going to have to continually be evaluated and dealt with, because as we all know, the tax structure of the U.S. changes constantly, as do other countries. So what is a management control system? Up until now, you guys have probably heard it somewhat discussed, most likely in some of your underlevel management courses, maybe in finance, possibly. But for the most part, not really discussed too much in some of your other accounting classes. But a management control system is a means of gathering and using information to aid and coordinate the planning and control decisions throughout an organization and to guide the behavior of its managers and other employees. As we have mentioned, not only in this class, but for sure in Managerial Principles of Accounting 2, managers are evaluated on the performance of their distinct area of which they have a degree of influence over. Management as a whole, upper management who is going to be evaluating said performance, has got to have a lot of information basically gathered and at their fingertips in order to perform this evaluation function. Alright, so we're going to be using this management control system in order to gather all of that information, which is going to help us do the corporate level decision making, planning, directing, and controlling. Some companies design their management control system around the concept of the balanced scorecard. The balanced scorecard is covered in one of the other chapters. We have lightly discussed the balanced scorecard in some of our chapters, but specifically the balanced scorecard has a chapter in our textbook designated solely to it. So hang on to this textbook. I promise you this is a great one to hang on to. There's a lot of stuff in it that may slightly change over time, but for the most part, it should not. So the balanced scorecard, we know, has 4 distinct areas: financial measures, revenues, cost, residual income, return on investment, all kinds of financial measures that can be made. We've talked about customer measures, things such as customer response time, on-time performance, things that we've already seen. Internal business process measures, average manufacturing time, manufacturing cycle efficiency, number of defective units, setup times, things like that. And then what about the learning and growth measures? Employee satisfaction, number of employees trained in certain areas of the organization. All right, so all of those things, as much of that we can capture within our management control system, the better we are going to be at running our organization. So well-designed management control systems use information from both within the company and from outside the company. And of course, we know and understand that some of it is financial and some of it is non-financial. Within our management control system, we are also going to be including such things as formal controls and also informal controls. So the formal management control system parts are parts of the company that include explicitly defined items, things that are typed out, written out, available on the company-wide intranet, the policies and procedure books, the employee handbook, the ethics policies, things like that. Also defined there will be the performance measures. And I have lightly mentioned this in past chapters, but we'll go into it more in this particular chapter and the one that comes after it. The performance measures need to be well defined, the calculations to be used, and the actual underlying values. For example, if we're going to say return on investment when we're talking about the assets, are we talking about historical cost? Are we talking about book value? What depreciation method is allowed for that underlying book value calculation? Things like that need to be very well defined so that they can be calculated easily and everybody understands what is going into the calculation. Incentive plans should also be spelled out. How do we give raises? How do we give bonuses? What are the commission structures? Are there stock incentives? What are the stock incentives? Who can get them? When can the stocks be utilized? Things like that are within an incentive plan. These kinds of things, of course, are going to guide the behavior of its managers and other employees. And this guidance is what is going to control how they react. Okay, so we'll be talking about what is called goal congruence, goals of the company, and management's striving to hit those goals. But we have to be careful in how we set up our incentives and how we go about evaluating our managers. We need to constantly consider how management may react, because they may do what is called suboptimal decision making. They may ignore what will happen to the corporation's bottom line and go for just what is going to be their own subunit's performance evaluation. Okay, so we'll talk more about this. The formal control system is composed of several systems. The management accounting system for information about the firm's costs, their revenues, and their incomes. We're capturing all that financial information. We will also hopefully have a really good system, either completely integrated in with our financial system or possibly ran on a separate software or system for HR. I briefly talked about this in one of our prior chapters. They can capture a lot of information about the employees, not just talking about their hire date and the positions that they've held within the company, but all kinds of things. Education level, certifications, all training classes attended, any training tests that were administered, have they been involved in any accidents, what was the result of the accident, what was the cause of the accident, have they been absent, what were their excuses for absenteeism. All kinds of things can be captured in these systems. Especially for the larger organizations that, of course, can afford for these tools, because as we have discussed, employee turnover, employee satisfaction, things that have to do with learning and growth and our internal processes regarding that balanced scorecard are all very, very important to our bottom line. We've also talked about capturing information about things such as rework, normal spoolage, abnormal spoolage, the yields of our processes, number of defective units as a quantity, but also as a percentage of the number of units produced as a whole, on-time deliveries, deliveries that are late by how many days, reasons for late deliveries. Again, as much of this information as we can capture, it better enables us to run the organization. Informal management control system includes the shared values, loyalties, and mutual commitments among members of the organization, the company's culture, and the unwritten norms about acceptable behavior for managers and other employees. We're really talking quite a bit here about the tone at the top. All right? The formal management control system, things that we are communicating expectation-wise, etc., those are the formal parts. Those are talking the talk. but are we walking the walk is the informal management. So, we, of course, would have both aspects tying together, and hopefully they are both singing off the same sheet. If not, we, of course, would have problems if management is not walking the walk. So, in order to be effective, management control systems should be closely aligned to the firm's strategies and goals. You guys should have already seen in some of your precursor management courses in the College of Business that a company sets up its mission and its vision, and then it comes up with its strategies and goals. Okay, so the goals of the company should align with the mission and the vision, and the strategies should be the way in which the corporation is going to obtain or meet those goals that they've set. You guys will use this information coupled with stuff you are learning in this class and your other classes when you take that capstone course, that strategic management, Management 4400. So to be effective, we've got to have everything aligned and working towards that goal. Management control systems should also be designed to support the organizational responsibilities of individual managers. All right? We have said at least once before, what gets measured gets taken care of. We've talked about this lightly in our budgeting and variance analysis chapters. Again, management by exception, we better be paying attention. What was our plan? What was our expectation? Was it met or was it not met? If it wasn't met, why wasn't it met? So we can plan these things out, capture the information, and then compare the results. Different levels of management need different kinds of information in order to perform their task. So management control systems must be aligned with the organization structure, and then of course we need to capture the information that adheres to those different levels of management so that we can evaluate their performance of their task. An organization with a decentralized structure will have different issues to consider when designing its management control system than a firm with a centralized structure. Effective management control systems should motivate managers and other employees, and motivation is the desire to attain a selected goal, also called goal congruence, combined with the resulting pursuit of that goal, which is called the effort aspect. So basically what we're saying is motivation, the desire to attain a selected goal, combined with the resulting pursuit of that goal, is made up of goal congruence and the effort exerted. All right, we're going to talk about goal congruence, the individual aspect of goal congruence, and the corporate goal of the goal congruence. And then we're going to also discuss the fact that it's not just physical effort, people, it's also mental effort. All right, so if we're talking about managers who need to perform their duties diligently and with good faith, they're going to use all of their tools. They're going to gather enough information to make a good decision. They're going to go through all the protocol for evaluating the information. We've seen how some of these decisions get made with incremental analysis, with those relevant revenues and relevant costs and all that stuff. They need to do a good job at putting all that together and evaluating the information and making a good decision. All right, so we're going to talk more about this kind of stuff as we proceed through the chapter. Goal congruence exists when the individuals and groups work toward achieving the organization's goals. We are focused on that goal. We agree with that goal. We are working towards that goal. Managers working in their own best interest take actions that align with the overall goals of top management. What if those managers do not take actions that align with the overall goals of top management? Then it's incongruent. They are not in agreement. They are not working towards a common corporate-wide, corporate bottom line goal. And we need to be aware of how that can occur. And we will talk about it. Again, effort is the extent to which managers strive or endeavor in order to achieve a goal. Effort goes beyond physical exertion to include mental actions as well, using their skills, their abilities, their education, experience, etc. In regards to decentralization, you also should have seen some discussion about this in one of your lower level management classes. Decentralization is when an organizational structure gives managers at lower levels autonomy or freedom to make decisions. So in other words, it is not a 100% of the time top-down management telling people, micromanaging them on a daily basis of how to run those subunits. Decentralization, those subunits folks have the ability and the authority to make decisions and changes in regards to how that subunit is being ran. Autonomy is the degree of freedom to make these decisions. The greater the freedom, the greater the autonomy. While I'm looking here at some of my notes, I wanted to mention that there are some really good books out there about management and decentralization and incentives and how to incentivize those subunits or those lower level managers. One in particular is called the carrot principle. I would recommend that you guys add that to some of your reading whenever you guys actually have time at a future date. A subunit refers to any part of an organization. It could be a large division or it could even be just a small group. Just a group of one or two people, like in a marketing department or something. All right, so it could be a large manufacturing division somewhere. But we're just going to use the term subunit to describe a part of the corporation. Here is a graphic illustrating to you guys what decentralized looks like versus a centralized organization. With a centralized, consider this center point here, or our nucleus of our little item. This is corporate management. This is the C-suite. These are in a centralized organization, constantly in communication with the subunits, telling them what they want done and how they want it done and when they want it done by. Of course, the C-suite people have a lot of things going on, email-wise, meeting-wise, etc., etc. Decentralized, you can see, we still have the C-suite folks here in the center, but then we have subunits that may have areas underneath them that they are able to make decisions on behalf of their own leg of our symbol here, or our illustration. So with our decentralized companies, we're talking about an organization structure where they have pushed the decision-making authority down from the center or C-suite down to the subunit managers. Decentralization is an organizational structure that gives the managers at the lower levels the freedom to make decisions. We've already talked about what autonomy is. A lot of organizations these days are ran as decentralized. Up until about the mid-20th century, many firms, however, used to be organized as a centralized or hierarchical fashion. This structure is concentrated at the top, and again, there's relatively little freedom for the managers at the lower levels to make decisions. Now, with a decentralized organization, no corporation or organization out there is 100% decentralized. Top management is still going to be making certain types of decisions and pushing those down to those subunits. Top management is still responsible for the overall strategy of the corporation, the planning, the overall financing for the organization, setting such things as compensation policies, incentive policies, and things like that. Companies are going to try to choose some degree of decentralization that is going to maximize the benefits over the cost. We're going to talk here in just a second about the fact that if we're not careful, we could have some redundancy in costs and expenses if we are too decentralized, or if management doesn't do a real good job of keeping tabs on all the types of things that their subunits are taking it upon themselves to make the decisions about. So there are benefits of decentralization. It does create greater responsiveness to the needs of a subunit's customers, suppliers, and employees. Good decisions cannot be made without good information. And the subunit people are on the front lines. They are more in touch with reality of the day-to-day operations of the corporation. All right, comparing those to top managers. Subunit managers are better informed about their competitors, their suppliers, their employees, as well as about local factors. And we'll talk here in a few minutes about not just the local factors when we're talking about subunits in the United States, but what about multinational corporations that have subunits all around the world? Okay, there are language barriers, there are time constraints, there are laws and all kinds of other things that come into play, and these subunit people have better information and more knowledge about what's going on in their respective area than some C-suite person who may have never even visited the country of the subunit. All right, so in regards to this greater responsiveness, I want you to consider the fact that there's that little nursery rhyme, Jack be nimble, Jack be quick. All right, if we are working off a more centralized organization, it takes forever sometimes for items of decision-making need to get up the chain of command and back down with a decision. In today's economy and the way that everything is so darn competitive, we don't have that kind of time. All right, so Jack be nimble, Jack be quick. We want to be the ones able to take the first mover's advantage, which you guys will talk more about that in your strategic management class. If we are able to respond quicker, this is going to lead to gains from faster decision making by subunit managers. All right, so if we can speed up the decision making, we can create that competitive advantage and make better decisions. I want you guys to think about how long it takes for our government to make decisions and then implement. Centralization slows down decision making because the decisions must be pushed upward through a layer after layer of management or government before they are finalized. Think of how long that takes. We are not able to make gains because of how that process works. Consider a battleship. It takes a really long time to turn a battleship. All right, so if we're having to wait to turn we are not able to make gains. With our decentralization, it definitely assists management, development, and learning. Subunit managers are more motivated and committed when they can exercise some initiative, when they have some ability to put in information and help make a decision. They have buy-in to the process. We've talked about that with budgeting. Same kind of thing here applies. They want to have access to the information, but they also want to have the ability to help make those decisions. Giving managers more responsibility helps a company also to develop an experienced pool of talent to fill higher level management positions and even weed out people unlikely to be successful as top managers. We're talking about employee empowerment here. Give those employees some leeway and see what they've got. You may find yourself some superstars by managing your organization this way. Of course, it sharpens the focus of subunit managers and broadens the reach of top management. In a decentralized setting, the manager of a subunit has a concentrated focus. They understand by those formal systems what is going to be evaluated. They are aided by the management control system in capturing information. They're on the front line every day, checking out what's going on, seeing what improvements can be made, etc. All right? They are focused on what's going on. What does this do for the C-suite people? They are not having to focus on all these subunits constantly. Therefore, corporate management is freed up. Senior managers at the headquarters are freed up from the burden of controlling day-to-day operations if they are running a decentralized organization. If they're not and they're running centralized, they are going to have a lot of stuff to keep up with, a lot of data and reports and things to constantly be looking at. So, running it decentralized allows them at corporate level to instead spend more time and effort on strategic planning for the entire organization. I want you guys to consider the fact that for many larger corporations, with the way we have subunits and divisions all around the world, we've got a global economy, we have got all types of companies that we are competing with. Business is done now 24 hours a day by these corporations. This is a lot for the C-suite to be taking on, to constantly have their hand on what's going on. When I went to China with my MBA group from Auburn, we visited such organizations as a Microsoft think tank, 3M, Computer Associates, IBM, several places, and they talked quite a bit of the challenges regarding what they refer to in China as following the sun. And that was basically the fact of trying to stay abreast of everything because of that 24-hour continuous cycle. Imagine a globe, if you will, or the world spinning and business is constantly going and it's never stopping. So there's a lot going on and a lot of information out there that constantly needs to be reviewed and considered in how an organization is ran. Cost of decentralization, there are some costs, all right? There are advocates for corporations being more centralized because they think that decentralizing an organization is too costly, all right? They believe that it leads to suboptimal decision making, which it can, and this is something we're going to talk about more in this particular chapter. We have to be careful. We have to structure everything a certain way. We have to be careful in how we evaluate. We need things to be defined so that we can try to curb that suboptimal decision making. So suboptimal decision making is when, or arises when, a decision's benefit to one subunit or a manager of a subunit is more than offset by the cost or loss of benefits to the organization as a whole. And I'm going to show you guys some examples. So in other words, we are not making the best decision for the organization as a whole. Therefore, we have made a suboptimal or not optimal decision. This is also called incongruent decision making. In other words, it is not jiving or congruent with the organization's goals. All right? Incongruent decision making, dysfunctional decision making, we could call it either one. This can lead to unhealthy competition, results in duplication of output, and results in duplication of activities. When we are talking about unhealthy competition, we are talking about the fact that in those decentralized organizations, subunit managers may regard themselves as competing with managers of other subunits within the same organization as if they were competitors or external rivals. So if we were to go back to that PowerPoint slide where I showed you over to the right-hand side the illustration of a decentralized organization, imagine one leg being a subunit competing with another leg that was a subunit. Okay? They're competing or they're infighting. This is not good for the corporation as a whole. This would push them to view the relative performance of the subunit as more important than the goals of the company. Right? So the managers are looking at their results versus another manager's results. Okay? They're competing within the organization. This, of course, is not going to be a good thing when it comes to the final results for the organization. Another thing I would like to mention about the unhealthy competition, think of this from the standpoint of the stockholders of the organization. We all understand that a corporation is in business to increase the wealth of the people who have invested the money into the organization. So this unhealthy competition hurts not only the organization, it also hurts the stockholders. If you look in the 15th edition of the textbook, it goes on to tell a story about the Toyota recall in 2010 and the congressional hearings on the recall. The hearings revealed that it was common for Toyota's Japan unit to not share information about engineering problems or reported defects between its United States, Asian, and European operations. Toyota has since asserted that it will change this dysfunctional behavior because that dysfunctional behavior did not help anyone. In regards to the results and duplication of output, if subunits provide similar products or services, then their internal competition could lead to failure in external markets. Okay, so we're talking about where organizations are able to implement products at one subunit and copy them at another subunit. So they're, in essence, competing against each other. All right, so they're mimicking each other's successful products rather than competing with their external competition. Eventually, this kind of behavior would lead to confusion in the minds of customers and the loss of each division's distinctive strengths. An example that's mentioned in your textbook talks about General Motors. And they used to have the Oldsmobile line, the Pontiac line, and the Saturn line. And they have since dissolved those. Regarding results and duplication of activities, I mentioned earlier that we could be incurring a lot of cost and expenses due to redundancy in the types of activities and departments that may be ran at multiple subunits. For example, human resources, information technology, accounting, marketing. Those kinds of things can be streamlined for the organization as a whole instead of having replicated services or redundant activities going on at all of those different subunits. When it comes to comparing our decentralized options versus our centralized options, management must compare the benefits and the costs, just like we do with everything else, when making a decision. What are the costs of decentralization versus the cost of centralized? What are the benefits of decentralized versus the benefits of centralized? And make our mind up. Decisions related to the type and source of long-term financing are made least frequently at the decentralized level. Again, we've talked about financing. This is going to be done as a whole. You guys have hopefully by now been exposed to the weighted average cost of capital calculation, cost of financing, bonds, equity, dividend payment policies, and things like that. Those are made at the C-suite level, not at the subunit level. Centralizing its income tax strategies, also occurring at the C-suite level, allows an organization to optimize across the subunits by offsetting the income in one subunit with losses in others. And we're going to see more about this so that you can really understand the fact that we've got to consider income taxes when we make our pricing decisions. So we're taking stuff that we have seen in our prior chapters and notching it up one or two more levels and considering income tax implications on how to set those prices when we have the subunits having transactions or exchanges of products or services from one subunit to another. We do need to consider multinational issues when we have subunits that are scattered around the world. So companies that are multinational operate in multiple countries, and they are often decentralized because centralized control of a company with subunits around the world is often physically and practically impossible. I have already mentioned the fact that we've got language, customs, cultures, business practices, rules, laws, and regulations that are all different for all of these different countries around the world. So decentralization enables managers in different countries to make decisions that exploit their knowledge of local business and political conditions, and to deal with uncertainties in their individual environments. They don't have to wait for the information to be translated into the language of the C-suite and discussed and conferred upon, and then a decision sent back down and translated back to another language, etc. The biggest drawback to international decentralization, however, is the loss or lack of control and the resulting risk. There are a lot of things that go on in multinational considerations that have huge risk. Your textbook talks about some of the billion-dollar losses that have been incurred due to decentralized multinational companies, and the fact that management loses its grip or control at some juncture. One of the ones that's mentioned is the UBS loss of $2.3 million back in 2011 due to a London trader who put a lot of money at risk by circumventing some controls, and they made some unauthorized trades that of course resulted in a huge loss. Multinational corporations that implement decentralized decision making need to design their management control systems to measure and monitor the performance of divisions. They need to take the people in the accounting information systems and IT areas, as well as internal audit folks, to task in helping them set this stuff up. As our global economy shifts even more due to the fact that we now are better able to deal with big data, we've got more things that we can do in utilizing data analytics, and the fact that we now have systems that have excellent dashboard systems, we can incorporate those things into our management control system. For example, could UBS have a dashboard set up to show the amount of money at risk by individual traders and have upper and lower limits set? And if a trader goes out of his limit, that management receives an immediate notification of something that's going on. Management and internal audit, maybe even the audit committee on the board of directors receiving notifications of that. Multinational firms have more things that they've got to consider, and therefore they need to build those into their management control system. Multinational corporations that implement decentralized decision-making usually design their management control systems to measure and monitor the performance of the divisions, which we have just talked about more and more. Regarding responsibility centers, let's just do a quick highlight of these, but we'll talk more about the fact that we're going to evaluate these particular centers. And this is just a recap of something that you guys have seen before in management accounting, your managerial principles too, and also most likely your cost class. So back in chapter 6 of our text, you guys could go back and look to the discussion about responsibility centers. Basically, we're talking about a segment or a subunit of an organization, and we can break them down into one of 4 types of centers: a cost center, a revenue center, a profit center, or an investment center. And in short, you guys should recall that a cost center is where the manager is accountable for costs only. A revenue center is a unit where the manager is accountable for revenues only. A profit center is where the manager is accountable for profit, which of course is the result of their revenues and their costs. So they are evaluated on both of those. And then the investment center, that manager is accountable for revenues and costs, and of course the resulting profit, as well as their investments.